There we go.
Okay, July 2014 dev call with GNU Radio. Let's start with the students talking about their GSOC projects. So I'm going to ask all of you to give us just a short little introduction to your project, sort of tell us what's going on. But we don't have time to talk about every project in full detail. But maybe if there's some basic questions, go ahead. Okay, Marcus.
So yeah, mine was or is the measurement toolbox, which is designed to be a universal toolbox to run benchmarks with respect to like performance, computational performance, and algorithmic performance, like say bit error rates or average errors or something. So this kind of contains a lot of sub-projects, and I've worked on things to dispatch tasks to different computers so that we can run more tasks at once and get the results back and everything. This includes something to actually like copy PyBombs to a target computer, run it there, get GNU Radio set up if it's not there, and start some flow graph on there. So there's also the remote execution agent, which is like primarily for executing finished GNU Radio top blocks with given parametrics and getting the results out of them. That works nicely now, and we have a at the controller side we need some dispatcher control system, so we have some GUI to click together what tasks we have. So we take a flow graph, we say, okay, these are the interesting variables that we need to vary between whatever 0 and 10 for, let's say, noise power, and then the dispatcher dispatches the tasks to the different targets and sets the parameters accordingly. And yeah, that's what basically works so far. So what's work to do is like getting this all nicely integrated into the companion, getting some visualizations out of it, getting some more intelligence into that whole system, not to like letting the user define, okay, this is a not interesting variable, don't change the sampling rate or whatever. And yeah. So.
Yeah, sounds like you made a lot of progress since the kind of midterm evals.
Yeah.
It's good.
Have to.
Okay. Any questions?
Do you have a? I'll just ask real quick. Do you have a like a set of priorities for what you're planning to tackle next?
Actually, I'd still like to work on the whole results aggregation stuff and like getting the whole integration. Like this is something that really doesn't work with one or the other without connecting both. Like getting the results back and storing them in a more sense-making way. And right now I'm getting back JSON, so I get a lot of JSON and I dump it to some console, and then I guess, okay, that's nice data. So that's what's really missing now, and I think that's something that the next big thing I should tackle is really getting something out of the data I'm generating. But
well,
so
yeah,
I
think there are two things that I see is the user end actually generating the data, and then the back end, the results end, which is doing something with it. It's good that you're using a common format like JSON, because that means that there's lots of tools that can read that and parse it and do lots of stuff with it. I guess my concern is more on the user side. How do we get these things set up, and just making sure that is kind of maybe excessively documented.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So putting documentation a little down. So yeah, that's true. So what working how I'm working right now is basically I get a top lock or a subclass of top lock, of course, and that this is a typical use case for GRC user. He generates a top lock, so I just get all the variables out of the top lock via a little like Python magic, and then we work on that. So that's fairly like self-documenting, but I guess there's gonna be like uncertainty about like what the results look like and stuff. So yeah.
Okay.
Good you mentioned that.
Cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I posted a news item today on the website about the GSOC where I also collected all the relevant links. Like most of the students having some kind of blog or something where they report their progress, and also have a repository. Marcus, yours was the only one where I wasn't sure exactly which repository I needed to link to.
Okay, yeah. Can I change that?
I don't know, but can you just post it in the chat and?
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Okay, I'm just gonna do it left to right in the order where you're on my screen. So next person would be Jan.
Hi. My project was the Speed Up GR Trellis project. It kind of changed, but to that later on. I did some work on writing vol kernels for Euclidean metrics calculations. They were really good, and I have like a couple of them for different types of data, integer, shorts, you name it. After that, I had some troubles with getting these kernels into the official folk test and profile system, but I worked around it with some puppets. Then I did the actual work for the Viterbi decoder, and this didn't went all too well. I wrote some SSE 4.1 kernel for the Viterbi path update, and it wasn't really faster than the generic one. Did some re-evaluation of my code with my mentors, Michael Schwal and Sebastian, and then we decided to like abandon GR Trellis and make our own out of tree module. And now we have a fully working Viterbi decoder that can use all rate 1 to something codes with generic generated polynomials and generic encoder length. And what's next on the list is doing the same thing for a log map decoder. Yeah, that's probably most about my project right now.
So yeah, this was what I was concerned about when we started this GSOC project, the actual use of GR Trellis, which in many ways is a fantastic piece of code, but as you're finding out, doesn't seem to lend itself to this kind of optimization. So, it sounds like you made the right move to try to just move out of there and do your own thing. I would recommend, because this isn't really part of your, I guess, the GSOC deliverables, but I'd recommend maybe trying to integrate this with our grFEC component as opposed to keeping it within your out of tree component. I'd eventually love to see us be able to integrate like your Viterbi. So, well, let me take a step back. In grFEC now, as of 3.7.4, there is a highly optimized Volk kernel specifically for rate 1/2 K7 codes. So the convolutional decoder that we have, the FEC API version of the convolutional decoder, can only run under that mode in an optimized way. it'd be great if we could incorporate what you've done to do other forms of convolutional codes with your, optimized decoder. And then it'd be cool to be able to compare that versus the highly optimized one for one particular code. So when it's available, we can use this really fast one. Otherwise, we use your mostly fast one. Those types of things. But basically, adding this to FEC the gRFEC would be great, I think.
Yeah, look into that, definitely.
I'm sorry. Did you already mention how fast your acceleration was?
Yeah, compared to the generic kernel, the path update kernel is about 3 times as fast, which I think is really okay if I'm only using SSE4. And the complex Euclidean matrix kernel is 4 times faster than the generic kernel. So yeah, that's what I got right now.
Cool.
Yep. Awesome.
Okay. Who's next? John. Alfredo.
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Awesome. So I guess I'll start by saying what I've done, like week by week, I guess, or as progress was made. I'm essentially working on 2 parts the way I see it. The interfacing the hardware side, the keystone, figuring out how to use that, and then modifying the GNU radio side for buffer management. So I posted a link on the work that I've done in dissecting the GNU radio runtime on the chat. Essentially, I figured out how to use the QA tests, and then I try to analyze it as it goes sequentially in the code, starting from the Python-generated GRC file. It still has some work, but the QA test is mostly done. So I think we'll be able to test new things now, new functionality that we want to add. On the Keystone side, I ran into some problems, getting the FFTC to work. Essentially, we tried to bypass the DSP. However, TA's software only uses all of the components from the DSP side. So when we try to run things from the ARM, it just didn't like it because the C6000 compiler isn't fully compatible with ARM compiler. So I had some errors and had to mess with some really nasty parts of the code. So what I'm doing now is running a resource manager. Essentially, the ARM is a server, and the DSPs are clients. And the ARM says, hey, DSP, you can use this part of the memory. You can use this subsystem. I'll give you permissions to use it. And so now I can run code on the DSP that works with the fast Fourier transform code processor. So I've had luck with that, better luck. So I've been able to get handles to the receive objects and the transmit objects. So I'm now able to send it data, which is good. I'm currently in the process of writing a test for it, just sending it, some random values. Well, not random, but getting an expected result out. I think I should be done by the end of this weekend. And, I'll push some code for what I've done there. And I think that's about it. So, any questions?
It sounds good to me. Not sure really if I have enough to even ask a solid question. Maybe just pinging Philip. What's your analysis of where he is and the use of the DSPs in this client mode to facilitate everything?
I mean, it's a very interesting part, I guess is what to say here. I have a suspicion that the DSP connectivity is because earlier generations of Keystone were DSP only without the ARM. I need to follow up with the TI guy just to sort of confirm that it's not an architectural thing, it's just the way the code was originally structured. And I guess, you know, my big thing here is this is a fascinating part for the number of accelerators stuck together, and working out how to use them effectively is a very difficult task.
Right. Okay.
Which pretty much knew going in.
Yeah.
Still very interesting.
On the GNU radio side, I was wondering what more you guys would want to see done on the runtime wiki. Because essentially, I'm just gonna go over some QA tests, mainly the buffer, because that has to do with my GSOC project, and then just briefly explain like how GNU radio works, you know, starting from GRC. I was wondering if there were any more requests.
Yeah, I really like the first of your to-do points, like, because this is something that I feel that we have to explain more often. Like, why can't I have a feedback loop in here? And that's gonna make that easier.
Yeah, and I think I'd have to read through your this wiki page more in depth before I could have any serious question for you or a suggestion.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit more early next week. I'll be on vacation for 2 weeks, but
Okay.
I should be in Monday, Tuesday.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe we can. Do you want to add anything? Nope. Who's next? Stefan.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, nice. Hi. Yes, my project is the radar toolbox, and I've done several things. First, I wrote a simulator to simulate the whole thing, that I don't need hardware every time I test my flow graphs. The next thing is I implemented the user echo timer. This is a simple UHD block which is capable to receive and transmit in a synced way. Then next, I've done a few modulations. There's a CK, FMCV, dual CV. For most of them, there are videos on my blog, especially for FSK and dual CV. You can watch them working. These days, I've done OFDM radar that's also working in simulation. Yes, and okay, I've done a few GUI blocks too with Qt for the whole visualization and such things. Yes, and I think that's all that I've done. Yes. Are there any questions about part of my work?
I think my only question, because you've done a really nice job with your blogs and the YouTube videos, is I guess what's the next step and what's the final package that you're looking for the end of GSOC?
Okay, the next big thing that I have to do is to write the documentation. I think that's a lot of work to do, because I've done almost nothing in this way. And then I'm not quite sure what the last steps has to be. I think I will see Martin tomorrow, probably, and we will talk about this especially.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one thing that I just thought of. I hadn't thought of asking you earlier. You have one blog to plot spectrograms. I think that might be useful in GRQD GUI. Part of as part of GNU Radio.
Yes, I've written. I showed you the video. I don't know. That's pretty new. Yes, I've done this spectrogram plots for especially of the M radar or Rapid Chirp radar, something like that. Yes.
Yeah. Basically, what I was saying is like maybe we can port that into GNU Radio. That might be useful for other projects.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's the block? You said it was a spectrogram.
So it plots. Well, it plots two-dimensional spectrograms. Well, actually, it's more of an image block, I guess you could say. I think that's more accurate. So it's not like a waterfall diagram. So it'll plot like one two-dimensional. It's like the MATLAB command image or like Matplotlib command.
So
image.
it's a raster plot essentially, just an image raster plot. No, okay, I see what you're saying. So it's kind of like a generic. It's like the spectrogram without being specifically focused on time versus frequency.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess like a spectrogram. I guess that's the same as a waterfall plot in a sense, right?
The easiest way is if you do off the M, you push the data in a kind of matrix. If you combine text streams with vectors, you have a matrix, and you plot a whole package as a matrix as a spectrogram plot. That's actually what it's doing.
So it's kind of like it's the two-dimensional version of Martin, which you were telling me about the vector plot. Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. Yeah, we'd like that.
So it looked like you had some target tracking in there as well. Are you looking at doing more with that, or looking at multi-target tracking or anything?
Okay, that's a project of a bachelor student at the CL, and I integrated this in GRadar. I don't. Okay, he know how it's working with multi-target. But the problem is more on the hardware side that I'm actually not capable to detect multi-targets because I'm operating in the 2.4 gigahertz ISM band, and how to say the Doppler frequencies are too low to detect several targets. But probably if we go to the 5.9 gigahertz ISM band, I'm able to do multi-target detections, and then we will also implement a multi-target version of this tracking stuff.
Cool.
Okay, nice, very nice. Okay, so we have a fifth student who isn't in the call right now. Like Nathan, maybe you can just like say one or two words about what he's doing and where he's at.
Yeah, the last time I talked with him, he was trying to basically string together all the parts needed for an OFDM kernel into sort of a dispatcher. That was sort of the last progress I've heard with him. I should get in contact with him ASAP, I guess.
Like maybe you can just like for the call, just like give us a very brief summary of what he's actually trying to do.
Yeah, so he's trying to make an accelerated version of basically an OFDM frame synchronizer for basically time and yeah. So he's trying to make one kernel that will do the whole thing instead of basically having right now. I guess we have blocks that are strung together, and each block is individually calling a Volt kernel, but there's probably a lot of improvement to see when we, instead of shuffling things into memory and out of memory through multiple Volt calls, making one larger call to a kernel that does the whole thing is probably faster. That's what he's investigating. And right now he's trying to basically do a prototype for it to make sure that Volk is capable of doing this and understanding how to do this in Volk.
Yeah, this is good because like he's given us a lot of individual kernels for very low level math stuff, which is great. But we've always had this idea that if we can combine a bunch of these things into a bigger kernel, then we should get an improvement. So it's good to see. It'll be good to get the actual data on that.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks to all of the students for joining the call, giving us an update. I think we have some pretty interesting stuff going on, and last I heard was that we'll probably see let's say most of the students, maybe all of them at GNU Radio conference, which is pretty cool. Okay, enough about that. Next topic, working group leaders. Yeah. Like Nathan, you were just talking anyway. Maybe you can just give us a quick update what's going on in Folk.
All right, sure. So Abhishek, at the first half of GSOC, he had actually done some protokernels for basically filling in some holes that we had and making some new kernels for sort of other math functions that we thought might be accelerated by using Volk, but weren't really sure. And he had a nice blog post on those results, and the results are generally really good. At some point, we'll merge those into Volk. Other work that's been going on, let's see, we had a call about a month ago, and I created several issues on the GNU Radio issue tracker. So I assigned them to myself because I'll eventually get around to them, but anyone else is definitely welcome to start hitting on them. We have a pull request sitting in the queue for one of them.
Is that it?
Yeah, so the direction that Volk is heading is we'll be getting neon things pretty soon and just filling in the holes of where they're... so there is also a new feature to help some generic GNU Radio QA, but the direction that Volk is headed is right now we're doing some cleanup, and then all the new work will mostly be on neon.
Okay. Sebastian couldn't make the call. He excused himself.
Do you have his email in front of you?
Yes, I do.
All right, go ahead.
So, basically, he actually organized a call very recently, and you can check out the call notes. They're very detailed. I wasn't on the call myself. Tom, you were on the call, right?
Yep.
Can you maybe give us the gist of it?
Yeah, so let me see if I'd have to pull up the notes to remind myself exactly. But one of the ongoing conversations that we've been having is a concept of versioning GRC files. So the idea is that there's going to be kind of a new tag when you have a GRC graph that will take the version of GNU Radio that it was built using. That way we know if you open it up in a different version if there's going to be incompatibility issues. So we're kind of trying to start down that line. And we're just trying to figure out a few little issues about, excuse me, we're trying to figure out a few little issues about kind of the right way to do it. I think the representation we've got pretty much down, but issues of how do you save and when do you save the versioning information? So if you pull up, if somebody writes a GRC file, saves it, and stamps it with their version, say 3.7.4, and then somebody else opens it up in a different version running a different version of GNU Radio, kind of what's the right behavior to do with that? Maybe just throwing up a warning if it's a different ABI or API version. If it's a minor version change, maybe we do something else, just a very minor, little warning to show what's happening there. That's less and less of an issue within an API version because of the blank boxes, the update that Sebastian put in there, where the box just kind of shows you what's missing. So that's going to help a lot with this, but I still think there's probably some way to update the user of what's happening. But then the question is, do we save it? When the new user saves the flow graph after making changes, do we update the version information? So we're just kind of playing around with those thoughts and trying to figure out the best way to do this. At some point, we probably want to come to a little bit more of a coherent understanding of this, and then open it up to a bit wider discussion to see what other people think. But that's one of the big things. Other things that we talked about, most of them, a lot of them have actually been implemented. So I've actually got a branch going right now that I will probably merge today. At this point, I actually can't see why not. That incorporates a lot of stuff that both myself and Martin have done, as well as a couple of really nice features from the GRC working group, Sebastian mainly, that involve the ability to hide ports. You know how we have the parameter to hide parameters when you create your GRC file for a new block? You can have this way of hiding it from different views of GRC. We can now do that with ports. So you can actually put a hide tag into a port that either shows it on the canvas or doesn't, and that hide directive can be parameterized in the parameters itself. So you can say, do you want to unhide or hide the ports at this time? Mostly that's to support message passing ports, so that if you have a block that has message passing interfaces that maybe aren't always used, or you don't always want to have them visible because it just takes some space and can be ugly. This allows us to hide those away from kind of the normal use cases. The other feature that I actually love this feature is, instead of having the ports in GRC, those colored ports for the inputs and outputs, right now we display the label in the port itself, which, depending on if the port's name is in or out, that's not too much space. But there are certain ports, like there's a set constellation port for the constellation receiver, very, very long. So this actually shrinks them all down to a very small rectangle that's still the same color as the kind of the port connection and colors, and if it's float or complex or message or whatever. But it's just a very small port, and so they're all the same size, and it makes the whole flow graph, I think, look a lot nicer and more compact. And as soon as you mouse over the port, it expands itself to the full label. So I think that's pretty cool. So I'll probably be merging those into master today to kind of get them out there and get feedback from what people like and don't like. And that final thing, that the expansion of the ports or shrinking, that's completely user controlled. You can set a view option to enable it or disable it as you like. So yeah, I think that's where we are with the GRC stuff and some of the new features we're working on. Oh, and then I guess Sebastian's final thing is we really need to update the GRC wiki page to describe a lot of the new features that are in there, how to manipulate or control or configure these features. And there's a lot of new stuff that's gone into how to construct your XML file when you're creating a new block. All of these things need proper documentation. So that's one of the kind of big picture upcoming things to do is make sure all that stuff is out there and written up properly. Okay, that's all for me.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff going on. A lot of stuff happening. There's one thing that Sebastian pointed out in his email, and he writes, what role should the updated wiki page on the GRC have? Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Like, we have a big, long wiki page on the GNU Radio Companion on our wiki, which is a bit outdated. So I guess volunteers to help with that are always welcome. Like, I don't know exactly what's missing on that.
It's mostly a lot of these new features that I was talking about. And I think there could be a much better guide for how to write your XML file when creating a new block.
That's what Sebastian was suggesting. Yeah, I think that's very important. I think what people often get wrong is like the order of tags, which is hard-coded in the DTD files.
Yep.
So having an example in the wiki page to be easily pulled up, that would be useful.
Yeah, and also something that just given the error message that happens when you do that, something that becomes searchable so that you can find that page that then gives you the information of, oh, this is what you did wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Phil, do you want to give us a quick update on embedded stuff?
Yeah, it'll be a quick update. I've been doing a bunch of stuff, but I can't remember which repos I've been doing it in. Pretty sure I pushed an update, bumping some revisions of the stable DAISY stuff. And hopefully within the next 3 weeks or so, we get zero-C ice into the stable stuff for people wanting to do control port stuff without having to worry about a lot of breakage trying to track OE master. And that's about it.
Yeah, I don't remember where I pushed this information, but we put together an embedded wiki page that is still, I'm still considering a work in progress as we're trying to figure out where our what we need to have here. But it tries to document, where to find the right information to do the right thing at the right time, and what GNU Radio is providing. And just so everybody knows, I'm updating what we're providing on here based on the Open Embedded DAISY branch. So that seems to be where we're trying to focus, at least right now. And so far, things look pretty good.
Okay. Accelerator. Did anything happen with the accelerator group? I kind of lost track of what was going on there.
We kind of kicked it off. Doug is in here, but we did kick it off. Have a kickoff working group call. Nothing huge happens. It was really just since it was a kickoff with the new with Doug as the new leader of that group, just trying to get a feel for kind of reestablishing the problem statements, what the goals of the working group are, trying to understand the community. And that's kind of the big thing right now, is just building up the community so that we know who to talk to to do the right thing and get the help we need to solve those issues. But that was pretty much it. Nothing, no substantial work to report.
So Tom, I'm actually on Nathan's phone at the moment.
Hey.
My computer hasn't joined, but I was in the middle of working on something else, and Nathan walked in. So, yeah, I don't actually have a whole lot to add to what you just said. I'm currently planning on doing another call probably towards the end of July or beginning of August, and yeah, I've gotten a couple more inquiries from people who are interested in this. The call that we had last month was mostly about the GSOC progress. So if we're going to be talking about GSOC stuff later, then we'll probably cover most of what the call covered.
Yep.
Okay. Tim, you have some stuff?
Yeah, just a quick thing. So I have basically a rewrite of the GR OFDM modem that's much more heavily PDU based, which I'll be pushing out soon, which avoids the some of the tag stream issues. And I'm still benchmarking the two, comparing them to each other. And I'm wondering if anyone's seen there's an issue with the tag stream block pegging up to 100% load, even on like a low data rate modem, which is kind of an interesting bug.
Which tag stream block?
The PDU to tag stream, like the one that's in the GR blocks.
So I haven't noticed that, but I have noticed. I think it was the stream to tag stream was actually more expensive than my Viterbi decoder block when I was doing some of the FBC work.
Yeah, so I think we've got some weird things going on.
Yeah, there's probably some excessive polling or something happening.
So those are kind of keeping me awake at night sometimes.
So in the PDU to tag stream, I remember, I think Balin saw that, already reported that, and like his hack was to put in a sleep call in the work function. And if I'm just pulling this out of my, I'm just pulling this out of memory, I'm probably getting it wrong. But, okay, so I think
sounds familiar.
yeah.
I think it's
And
just spinning, waiting for space.
Exactly, I think that's the problem, and I think we said we couldn't put that in there because it kind of violates our contract of work not blocking or something.
Well,
Yeah,
there's more to it than that.
Okay, yeah, Jonathan, maybe you knew
Yeah,
more
no.
about it.
What's happening is that the scheduler is calling the work function because there's room in the output buffer, and so it's telling that you can produce stuff, but it has to poll on the incoming PDU queue in order to see if there's something to write. And what we need to have in the scheduler is the ability to say, don't invoke my work function until there's a message on this message port. And that way there's no spinning, there's no blocking, and everyone's quiet until a message comes in, and then the work function will get called to dequeue that and put it in the output buffer.
Yeah.
So it's a runtime scheduler change that we just haven't talked about.
Yeah, so I'll look a little more into that, but it was something that caught me off guard the past week or two.
Yeah. So one thing actually that I don't know if we officially announced that we're trying to launch another working group related to basically better support for digital modems, which is going to involve a lot of the message passing, the PDU stuff, the tag stream stuff. So all of that's basically what Tim is talking about now and focusing on. Hopefully we'll have more to talk about with that soon.
Okay, the other thing we usually talk about at this point is the tutorials, but they're right now they're in beta testing, so there's nothing exciting to report.
Yep, and we've already gotten a bit of feedback on that, which is great, and we're just waiting for more, and then we'll probably open that up to a bigger audience.
Yeah. Okay, so before we talk about 3.7.5, I just have a small thing. I was asked about the how do we do versions, and do we have a long plan and that kind of stuff. So basically what I said was that if you pull up the roadmap on our wiki page, on the wiki page, then it's not incorrect, but it's not the entire story. So I don't know if you can see it on my screen right now. If I still have the sharing on. So you can see a release version 3.7.5, and then it automatically pulls in the wiki page, that we sort of manually update with whatever we think is interesting, and then it also lists the features that are associated with that issue. So what we have here is kind of correct, but it's not the full story. So if a feature isn't in here, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to be in the release, because we kind of handle that pretty loosely. And I don't think if we ever agreed on a release schedule, but it kind of tends that we have a release every 3 to 4 months. Yeah, and then the 3.8 release, which is down here, we haven't even set a date for that yet, because we want to let the 3.7 code base mature a bit. Maybe Jonathan, you can add something to that.
Well, it's difficult to put dates on releases or have a date-driven release process. Usually what happens is we get to a point, for example with 3.7.4, where pretty much the only major work that was coming in and being merged, ready for a release, were bug fixes. And the larger work that was going on were all things that now wouldn't finish for a while. And would be targeted for 3.7.5. So we had hit a point in development, and this typically happens every 3 or 4 months, where the current set of features that are being worked on slows down, or at least the current set of features that can be merged in. And so it was a good opportunity to close things off and make the release. A similar sort of thing happens on a longer time scale with the 3.6 or 3.7 or 3.8. What we end up having is it's harder to backport work happening on the next branch to the master branch if needed, and it gets to the point where maintaining, both master and next is a problem, that usually is a sign that the next branch is getting ready to be a mature release. And that's what drove the 3.5 to 3.6. It drove 3.6 to 3.7. What's different now with 3.8 is most of the feature definitions of 3.8 are simply version changes in requirements and some shuffling of, deprecating of some features. So there's no real pressure to release 3.8 right now. We can continue for quite some time in the 3.7 API, and there's a lot of work queued up for that. So I guess it's a long way of saying we don't have a roadmap with dates and milestones in the way that a commercial software project might maintain. In open source, it's more a matter of who's willing to do the work and what direction it goes in. There are things that happen that we didn't anticipate, but people show up and are willing to put in effort to implement something. And so we never expected it to be in the release, but there it is, and it works, and it's great. Let's do it. There are other things that turn out to be more difficult than we anticipated, and we push them off.
Yeah.
Not sure if that was the answer you're going for, but.
And that having been said, and I don't dispute anything with that, but we are, I think, in some ways trying to be a little better as far as at least the next version of trying to come up with at least a bit of a vision for that. I feel like we're in many ways caught up, and so now we can really say these are the gaps that we see that the next version should try to fix or work on. And we did that with 3.7.4. We had our work in progress for 3.7.4 page, and we've already started that for 3.7.5. So we're doing a little bit more planning on that. But of course, that's still going to involve what Jonathan said, which is unknown things that come to us from elsewhere, things that crop up that we have to deal with, and then some of these might end up being issues that we have to push off until another release just because of complexities that we didn't foresee.
Okay. Yeah, I think that
one more comment. What we could be more disciplined about is the issue that you raise here about the roadmap not showing the line items as part of like the open tickets. If we were to take everything that was shown here on this work in progress for 3.7.5 and add a feature request inside the tracker and assign that to release 3.7.5, then it would show up when you clicked on that on the roadmap as all these things. We don't really do that. So that is an area we could probably be a little bit more disciplined in.
We had tried that for a while, but I think when we were doing that, we weren't as disciplined ourselves. I mean, I think this is partly because I was new to the role that I'm in now. That the issues were improperly tagged. We weren't really sure. There was missing things, and the bug tracker itself just wasn't as well maintained as we've really gotten to a better habit of doing. So we dropped that idea a while ago, but I think Jonathan is right that I think where we are now from a management perspective, we could bring that concept back.
Yeah, I think the feature tracker like this is just something we keep bringing up, and it's just a matter of discipline. But I think it really helps. If that is nice and tidy and bugs are assigned, and yeah. Okay, but let's talk about 3.7.5. There's already a ton of features in this list here that are scheduled to happen. Yeah, Jonathan, I'm just going to pass back to you because you put in most of these.
Sure. So we just introduced in the 3.7.4 release the new 0MQ blocks, which lets you extend streaming ports over 0MQ message transports. What it does not do is stream the stream tags inside that. So in this release, we'll be adding that encapsulation so that when you connect a stream port out to a 0MQ port and on the other end bring it back in, you get all the stream tags that go along with that. And that'll be something that will be useful now that we're using stream tags for a lot more information inside of FlowGraph. The other thing with 0MQ is we have not implemented the async message encapsulation over the 0MQ transports. So that'll be that's a little bit more tricky because it's event-based, and we probably will have to have a background thread or something to manage that. But the endpoint will be that you'll be able to send async messages to blocks on the other side of ZMQ streams, and your flow graph can be distributed over multiple processes on the same machine or on different machines separated by a network. And the async messaging and the streaming of data will be transparent over that. Any questions on the ZeroMQ? Because that's a no. The other piece of this that I have, and Tom has the rest, is the digital TV stuff. We'll be finally merging in the work that Andrew and I have been doing on ATSC. We did get a generous contribution from Bogdan Diaconescu of his GRDVBT out of tree code. We'll be integrating that after we get the ATSC stuff cleaned up. We are soliciting for input from people who have implemented DVBS and the cable TV standards, and I've had a couple of responses already for donation to the project, and that will get integrated hopefully in this release, perhaps later. The end point of this, we're hoping, is that we have a common transceiver application that you can pick, whether you're doing the DVB-T standard or the ATSC standard, with all the things that are in common between these different things, abstracted into one interface. And that'll be a great way for people to experiment with GNU Radio with over-the-air signals that usually they have around them, depending on where they are. I guess Tommy got the rest of this.
Yeah, and I'll try not to go too long on anything. I think the biggest thing is that, and Martin and I have already done a lot of work on this, which is switching all of our use from WX to QT. This does not mean removing WX. This is just we're switching the default behavior to QT GUI instead of the WX GUI. So Martin did most of the examples, and in that translation he identified a few holes between the two that QT GUI was not able to do, and I fixed, I believe I fixed all of the holes that have been identified, and that's in this big branch that I will try to merge this afternoon. So basically, we're just trying to make sure that the capabilities of the QT GUI and what's available match the WX stuff, so that when you try to port a project between the two, you can do so, without a problem. What else do we have going on here? Oh yeah, and then there's just the general improvements. There's just a couple of notes. Optimizations, that's kind of always an ongoing thing. And one of the things that we're trying to focus on now is more Volk kernels, more Neon-based support in Volk, which involves a lot of kind of minor issues. Well, not maybe minor, but things that I don't think we need to bring up right now in the call. You can read the notes on the wiki. As part of this, a lot of what we're doing, and Nathan has been instrumental in a lot of these issues, I think as well as Doug. And so we're looking at some performance counter improvements that Nathan has started from the Hackfest, so that we can start looking at like cache misses and branch misses and things like that. And then use that with a little bit better look into some of the assembly code that we're producing, especially from the Volk side. And so all of that's just going to kind of be an ongoing process. So it's not like we're going to complete this by 3.7.5, but these are just some of my concerns with 3.7.5. And then we started this in 3.7.4, where I added, myself and a few others added a few interfaces, message port interfaces to control stuff via messages. Set parameters, enable, disable blocks. There's a bit more of control stuff that's happened with the message passing, and I think we want to do a lot more of that in this release. Partly, if we focus on that as a problem, It's one of the things that Martin and I ran into, where I did a message emitted from one block, and Martin was the guy that did the other block that captured the message, and the messages were incompatible. So we just want to make sure that there's a format so that we're not just coupling two blocks together. We want to make sure that it's to keep these as generic as possible, so that one block can emit a message, and many other blocks, understanding the same concepts, can then accept them. Yeah, so I think those are the three things. Oh, and then there's the GRC stuff, and that's actually what I mentioned earlier with the GRC working group call is what you see up here. That there's a couple of branches that I've already merged in from Sebastian, and we'll probably try to flush out this GRC component and try to understand where we want GRC to be by 3.7.5 over the next couple of months. So are there any questions on that? I think that wraps up where my head is right now on the next release. Oh, Tim, can you say a quick question? The slider crash bug? I don't recall that.
All right, I'll get you a backtrace or look at it or something.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. There is one. So the one last thing that I want to say is to mirror what Sebastian. He posted this to the mailing list. I think it was sometime today or earlier this morning. That we have a demo and poster session available at the conference this year. So the submissions for that are due at the end of the month, at the end of July. So please just go onto the GNU Radio conference website. Which is easy enough to find. Probably post it into the mail, the chat room. Yeah, go on there. There is a call for posters or a call for demos link, so that you can just submit your idea for coming to the conference and showing off, showing off some cool stuff that you're doing. We're actually going to have a whole demo room available, so that it's just going to be a place for people to set up, show off their stuff. People kind of gather around, collaborate, talk, interface. Those sorts of things. So just keep that in mind and get your submissions in by the end of the month.
I've got a question regarding standardizing the message format. Does this mean we are expanding the PMT stuff? Like to have something higher format or higher level format, or how do you think to go about that?
I guess it's more about the like a convention. I guess is probably the right word. Like we're not gonna the PMTs already encapsulate anything we want, and that's exactly the problem. So there's like so many ways to convey messages. And it's probably going to be more like a best practices thing, or we're just going to sort of, define standard messages or that kind of stuff. So we already kind of do that in the PDUs, where we have like a pair of a uniform vector and a dictionary, and we just need to figure out what the applications are for messages, and
It'd be nice to have a wiki page with like standard keys we use or something.
Yeah, that would probably make the most sense, because it's still pretty dynamic. Does that answer your question, Marcus?
Thanks.
Hey, so I think keeping that in the Doxygen documentation would make it easier to keep in sync instead of a wiki page.
I think I agree with Nathan on that, and that's I think I've done that for the blocks that in fact, in the blocks that I manipulated to add messaging, maybe not all of them, but most of them, I basically have a part of the manual page for that block describe the message input and message output ports and their format. And I think Martin has done that on his branch that updates the UHD blocks to have inputs and outputs. Maybe it's not the exact same format, and we can fix that, but I know he has added that information. But I agree. I think it should be in the manual, not in the wiki, because the manual tracks the code itself better.
And maybe we can start it off on the wiki page somewhere, just because changing the manual a lot is harder than the wikis. Like at least so, until we get it in a shape where we can kind of agree to put it in the manual.
That's fair.
Okay, there's nothing else left on the agenda, so does anyone else have anything to add? We've been going on for an hour already, so if that's it, then I think we can call it.
Yeah, I felt pretty good.
Yeah, okay, that was pretty productive. Okay, guys, see you around in a month or earlier. Happy hacking.
All right, thanks, Martin.
Later. All right.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Later.